welcome and thank everyone for joining us today. I'm going to start off first with a land acknowledgement. All of our speakers today are meeting virtually from various places around the country, in New York, Los Angeles, Nashville, and Tampa, Florida. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge the traditional territory and homelands of, and please bear with me if I say these wrong, I'm so sorry, the Munsee, Lenape, the Tongva, Cherokee, the Seminole, and the Tocobaga people. So we want to make sure that we pay them respect from all the places that we are today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Lisa and we'll get this started. Lisa?
Thank you, Chantel. Appreciate that. Definitely a mouthful when you had to give the land acknowledgements. Great job. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited. Songtrust is excited to have you join us today. This is going to be phenomenal, I guess is the appropriate word. What we are going to be discussing: equity, music industry, women and equity in the music industry. And today we are being joined by some phenoms in the music industry in their own right. I guess I should start by introducing myself. I'm just so excited. I'm Lisa Robinson. I'm the Vice President of Community and Social Engagement at Downtown Music Holdings. Prior to that, I was the Vice President of Income Tracking at Songtrust. So I'm still in the family. So I would love to introduce each of our speakers today. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves before they start. But first, we have Mickey Shiloh, we have Portia Sabin, and we have Janette Berrios. I hope I pronounced that correctly. But we are going to start. Please, Janette, if you'd introduce yourselves to everyone, that would be awesome.
Hi there, everybody. Obviously, thank you for joining us. So my name is Janette Berrios, and I'm the head of corporate marketing for Symphonic Distribution. We're an independent music distributor based out of Tampa, Florida, with offices in major music markets like New York, Brooklyn, and then some recent expansions into Bogota, Sao Paulo, South Africa, and Mexico as well. We do distribute all genres of music, but we have a pretty hard focus in electronic, hip hop, and Latin music. I've been working, all my experience in the music industry has been a lot of it focused in Symphonic as well. I do focus a lot and have a big passion for entrepreneurship, artist development, event production, branding, a little bit creative design, a little bit of everything. And a huge advocate for women and women in the music industry. So really glad to be part of this conversation.
Great, thank you. Mickey, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys. I'm so excited to be here. Mickey Shiloh, I'm a singer-songwriter, entrepreneur, Forbes 30 Under 30 in music. I've been in the music business for 15 years. I know I look super young. I'm 30 now. I know it's still young to some of you, but I've written for a lot of major artists, everyone from Janet Jackson to Britney Spears, LL Cool J, Iggy Azalea, J-Lo. And I'm currently the CEO of HRDRV, which is the world's first subscription-based and super artist-friendly record label, basically a community record label. And we provide over 2,500 artists, not 25, but only 25 use it sometimes, but over 2,500 artists with cover artwork, mixing, mastering, distribution administration, video promos. Basically, we digitized all the major label departments so that we have a one-stop shop for artists to sign up and get things either free or super, super discounted. So very excited about that. And again, same like Janette said, I'm a huge advocate for women in this business and excited to have this convo with y'all.
Great, thank you. We're going to talk later about what skin products you're using.
Press and water.
How you look so young.
And water.
And Portia, last but definitely not least.
Thanks so much, Lisa. So I'm Portia Sabin. I'm the president of the Music Business Association. The Music Business Association is a trade association in the music space. And we're a little bit unique because we bring together both the copyright owners in terms of the labels, publishers, sometimes managers and artists on one side, and then the copyright users on the other side. So we also have Amazon, Spotify, Pandora, a ton of tech companies. We also have the retailers and the distributors. So we're sort of a big tent organization where people can meet and talk about the issues that are important to them in the music industry. And of course, one of the most important issues in the music industry on an ongoing basis is the status of women in the ranks of executives, and how we're doing in terms of breaking the famous glass ceiling, and making sure that women are represented at all levels, and not just women, but women of color, trans women, all sorts of visibility for folks. And so that's a big part of what I do, as well as run the trade association.
Great, thank you all. Appreciate the introduction. So let's just get to it. Mickey, why don't we start with you? But questions are for everyone, of course, but we'll start. Who or what inspired you to get into the music industry?
I tell this story all the time, so it'll be quick. My dad was a rapper, so I always say that I got the music bug from him. He used to just be around the house, like his pen and pad. And that became my first childhood dream, was actually to be a famous rapper. I don't know if I'd be here if it wasn't for his influence or his interest in music, because nobody else in my family is musical. I used to go to the studio with him, all throughout elementary school, and it was just a very unique experience as a child. But yeah, and then I learned to record myself around 12, and he was also just such a huge supporter of my mission in going into this industry. And I remember one conversation we had that really stuck with me. I must have been 12 years old, literally. We were in his car and he was like, "You need to be a boss in the business. You cannot be anything but a boss." And here I am, boss. Yeah, it was dad all the way.
BAWSE, right?
Hey, you already know. Yeah.
Yes, we know. Janette, if you can answer the same question, who or what got you into this industry?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so my husband, back then my boyfriend, was the founder of, or is the founder of Symphonic, so essentially, it's literally, at this point, it's going to be 10 years ago. Yeah, we had met, and he had this company. He still was doing, like, he's a DJ and producer. So he was still, DJing, producing, kind of like 60% of his focus was still making music. And then Symphonic was like his 40%, because it was still growing, essentially, he started it from grassroots. It took him about like 3 years to, for the company to actually, earn enough so he can work, independently in it. And then he started working with his brother, his best friend, and then obviously his girlfriend. And it was a big step, obviously, because like I had my, kind of comfortable corporate America job, in finances. I had a company before previously, so I kind of understood kind of like that risk of like working on your own, and kind of really understanding, like what it takes to be an entrepreneur and have your own company, and the commitment, that's needed, like kind of like the hustle. And I loved it, because I know that there was a lot of hats to be worn, so I was doing marketing, client marketing, helping with reporting. So it was a lot of a little bit of everything, but I've always had a huge inclination in the arts. I like growing up, I was like in high school, my art teacher's like right hand, like I was the girl that if you were running for president or whatever other, like let's say like school, leadership thing, it's weird, like thinking it back now, that it's like, I would go to people and like, I want to, create a campaign for you. And since I had access to my art teachers, like all the resources, I would be, creating all these campaigns and posters, so I feel like I was like a natural promoter, in a sense. And I'm naturally really involved in the arts as well, even locally. So I love being able to work with creators and creatives, because even though it's a work of art that they're doing, they also have to treat their music as a business, so I feel like we're, like everything that we're learning as individuals and as a company, that's what we try to share through Symphonic and to our clients, because we have a really big focus on education. So yeah, so that's how it started, it was like I was the fourth employee, and now we're about 100, and just like kicking it.
Nice. Great story, both of them. And Portia, who or what got you started in the music industry?
Well, I was a big music fan as a kid. I think I bought my first album when I was 10. It was Jay Giles' band, Freeze Frame, which is kind of hilarious now. I don't know that I would own that as, it's like, yeah, Jay Giles' band. Whatever, that's what I bought. And I decided I wanted to be a musician, so I got bass guitar lessons. But this was the 80s and I couldn't find anyone to play with me. I think most of the boys had started playing a little bit younger. So they were already like, and so it's just really hard for me to meet people to play instruments with until I got to college. So then when I was 18, I started playing immediately and I played in bands all throughout college. And then after college, I actually moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota to make it in the music industry with my band, which we did not do. We broke up after 6 months. But then I moved back home to New York City and I got into a new band, an all-girl band. And that band led to another band, another all-girl band. And that band did actually make some records, go on tour, get a little bit of radio play and some, we got some attention. And so after I had played in that band for a few years, when we broke up, I had just enough experience, I would say, to be dangerous. So I started managing some of my friends' bands. And I started my own artist management company and I did management for 10 years. And then my husband at the time he founded the independent label Kill Rock Stars and he wanted to do something else with his life. So he asked me if I would take over the label and shut it down. But he had 27 records that needed to come out or already contracted to come out. So I put out 27 records in a year and I was like, hey, this is fun. So then I ended up running Kill Rock Stars for 13 years, which was great experience. And then 2 years ago, I got the call about this job at Music Biz. So that's what got me into music.
Great. I love each of your stories are as much as they're different. They're the same. You started out differently, but where you are now, you're still in the business. So you endured. So that's a testament to all three of you. So we're going to get into the thickness of it. We've seen some small incremental changes in the music industry as far as it relates specifically to women. We have organizations such as She Is the Music, Be the Change. There are women ERGs popping up. There's one even here at downtown. And just what are your thoughts on the changes that have been made? How do you think the music industry can further develop or make changes needed to make sure that the industry is indeed inclusive and is indeed an environment that's equitable for music creators? You want to start, Portia, this time?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I honestly think, I'm pretty old. I think I'm the oldest one here. So I would say that the only thing that says is that I've been around the music industry a really long time. And one thing I will say for sure is there's a real difference today in terms of the number of women artists, the number of women executives, very, very noticeably. When I first started out as a musician, women were mostly in the publicist lane. There were a lot of women publicists, but in terms of women executives, label heads, people at the president, CEO level, it was much, much less, much fewer than there are today. So there has been significant progress in terms of that. Also in terms of women artists, I remember being in a band used to be, like I said, really difficult for women and noticeable when it was there. And then, women always had to put up with these press things that would say, all girl band, blah, 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 instead of just name the band. And I feel like that really has changed in my lifetime, which I'm super grateful for. I really appreciate that. I think now when you read about bands, you just read about a band. You don't have to know that, there's 2 girls, 3 girls, all girls, whatever. Right now, I think like the band, the Lindas, people aren't talking about them so much as an all-girl band. They're talking about them because one of them is 9 and the other ones are like 12 and 14. Like they're little kids and they're great. They're really good, but you don't hear so much about, like, even with them, that it's just that they're all girls. Like, so that feels like a huge step forward. At the same time, obviously, as we all know, we live in a patriarchy. We live in a sexist culture. We live in a sexist world. There's women have to, and people of color have to try twice as hard to get half as far, always. And that's still, I think that's completely still true. The one thing that I would say that I've noticed in my own life and other people's lives, especially in the last 2 years, is you have got to do some work on yourself in your own network in terms of making sure, like, if you look around you, it's like, I'm white. If every one of my friends in my network is white, I have a problem, and the problem is mine. And I got to fix that. I got to get out there and fix that. So I think, you really have to pay attention to who's in my network. And if you're a monoculture, then do it yourself. Get out there, find new people, because, there's people all over this industry, and there's no reason that you shouldn't know them, and you have to make more of an effort. I think that's the other thing. It's like I just said, women have to work twice as hard to get half as far. True, but make sure you're putting your energy in the correct direction, right?
Definitely. We all were shaking our heads, and if we could see everybody else, I'm sure they were as well. Mickey, would you like to touch upon that as well?
Yeah, I would love to. I was really enthralled with what you were just saying, because yeah, you've been in the game for a really long time, and just, it's super refreshing to hear that you do see an extremely noticeable change, right? And that was what I was thinking. It's like, I feel like we already are doing the most we can to make that change and make women more prevalent. It's really inspiring to see so many women, and also, like you mentioned, like a lot of women of color, myself included, are taking these steps to set these companies up, these organizations, and run them with so much grace and transparency and power, female power. It's definitely something that, we just need to continue seeing more of. One of my artists on hard drive, Rachel Mansfield, she was actually in one of the She Is the Music mentorship programs. And I remember talking to Rachel recently just about, how much knowledge and support she received there. And so it's really so great to see. And we got to be honest, like, women are much more detail oriented and organized than the average man. So again, I'm just really happy to see more female led companies. And I think at this point, because the question really was like, what, if we can improve, how can we improve? One idea that I had is, maybe some sort of, and I don't know if this exists, but like some sort of bigger convention coming together that brings all of these different female-led initiatives into one place. Like, yes, we're doing these on Zoom, and it's really amazing. But even, as the world opens up again, at some point, getting together in person, and so that we can all be in one space. And again, I truly believe that we're doing everything we can in setting this new tone, that women are here, we've been here in this space and in this industry, but we're finally taking ownership in a real way, in a space that was initially very much a man's world, and still is. But yeah, I think we're doing everything we can. But I'd love to do a huge convention, like with all the companies in one place. I think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, a bunch of female bosses under one roof. I'm there. Sign me up.
Hell yeah.
Sign me up. Janette.
Yes. So interestingly enough, yeah, like what Portia was saying, I can totally see how, there were many more barriers, to break, years ago. Especially too, because I think like, the music industry, it's not an easy industry. A lot of industries, I feel like typically there tends to be obviously like let's say like a pay gap, because of sometimes like women, like because of just certain social constraints, like we're considered perhaps like the main caretaker. And, once a woman starts having children, then we're the ones that perhaps have to have a little bit of more responsibility at home. And then, obviously then in the music industry, especially the people that are in the business side, we work during the day. We then have stuff maybe in the evenings, and we might have stuff even in the weekends to do, like in terms of checking out shows, in addition to our day-to-day work. So I feel that, in terms of like, let's say as an entity, as a company, being able to at least like recognize some work-life balance, in terms of like those opportunities. And if there are things that require, things in the evening, kind of like balancing those out, that not necessarily only men get to take those opportunities, because like in those opportunities, like checking out shows, people get to know more artists, you connect deeper with like, you make more relationships. So being aware, of those things. I feel something too, like internally in a company, like having kind of like a recruitment commitment, that having a diverse workforce, from gender to, being diverse as well, like having that commitment internally. Mentorship programs are also really great. We just recently launched back in March. We called it Women Empowerment, a mentorship program for female identifying people in the work and in the music industry. Really excited. We basically got to match 105 women, with mentors, which is amazing. We're really excited about it. We still have a few more to go. But stuff like that, I feel like and offering, I feel like even for us, for women, I feel sometimes it's uncomfortable to like be in certain situations like this, like sometimes you have like your first panel or, they invite you to chat like this, but I feel like it's so important to put yourself out there because, especially if you're from, like a underrepresented group, because like, I feel it's so important to have representation, to see somebody that looks like you and that comes from a similar background, because it's super inspirational, to see somebody that can be like your point of reference of how this can work for you. So yeah, I think those are kind of some of the, some of the little tidbits there that I can think of.
Great, thank you. And to your point about being uncomfortable, I think women, we're typically uncomfortable, right? But we persevere. So that's also a testament to the power of the sisterhood. So thank you for that. Portia, you hit the nail when you said all girl band. There's been talk where media will say female rapper, female songwriter, all girl band. What are your thoughts about that? And whomever would like to start with that. Do you feel that is a disservice to women? We won't talk about the men, but is it disservice to women when they have to label it or specify that, yes, these are women, or yes, these are girls? If someone would like to take that.
I definitely think it's a disservice. I also think if you think about it in terms of like award shows, like back in the day, the Grammys used to have separate categories. It's like best female vocalist, best male vocalist, like, and it's like, really, we're doing the same job. Like, we shouldn't be separating ourselves. To me, it just seems like ghettoization. I think it's a bad move, because what you're basically saying is, well, you may be the best of the girls, but you're not good enough to compete with the guys. And that what you're doing is fundamentally somehow different based on gender, which makes no sense, especially nowadays in the age of transgender, non-binary, gender non-binary. It's like, none of these gender things should matter at all to whether or not you're a great artist and whether or not you have fans who love you. Like, why does gender have to be a part of that? Like, I always think of it because I'm really tall for a woman, and everyone's like, I always think of that in terms of like, why don't we just divide things by tallness? You know what I mean? It's completely random. It's like, okay, well, this short people artists, like, and tall people artists, like, which one of these, that's so stupid. Yeah. So to me, it makes no sense.
Tall woman artist,
Right.
Yeah. As someone who's 5'11" in flat shoes, I agree. Mickey, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. At the same time, we're all aware of it's just the era that we're in, right? I tweeted something about this last week. I was like, I can't wait for female CEO to be in headlines when, I'm hopefully one of the most powerful women in music. I hate that we're in this time where we have to denote that. However, I've kind of like tricked myself just for the time being to like take some sort of weird pride in it. I do see that being different in the future. Like Portia even mentioning that bands today, they don't really say, oh, it's all girl band, it's just a band. So hopefully that leaks into the business world too. I think that once more women are recognized as, powerful CEOs, especially in this industry, the scales will kind of, balance out and we'll no longer need to make that distinction. But again, it's the era, I get it. So I do take a little bit of pride in the extra moniker, if that makes sense, for now.
Perfect sense. Janette?
Yeah, I sometimes honestly, I have mixed feelings about this question, only because, even though, yes, let's say if we don't add the gender, then at times there are certain entities that don't maybe commit to let's say gender equity. Sorry if you're hearing some noise in the background, but having that's the commitment of nominating people that are diverse, that at sometimes let's say, and we see it a lot, let's say, whether it's the Grammys or maybe even Oscars, that you see that women aren't getting recognized, so I feel ideally, yes, we should move into a direction that shouldn't matter, gender shouldn't matter, especially when there's different types now, because we have diverse gender, so it's that should come to an end. But I feel we're still in a space that not everybody is working to, yes, I feel the younger generation is more aware of that, but, there still are some, organizations that have, they're still very traditional or having, caught up to the times, and they're not being equitable, in terms of the representation in these awards. So that's why in certain cases, I feel it shouldn't matter, but let's say I feel for the media or anything like that, or what you're saying, promoting a show or stuff like that. But I feel when it comes to awards, I feel then they're just lacking a lot of representation. So that's where I feel maybe it should be. So, we can have more representation, but so yeah, it's a little bit, I feel mixed feelings that I have there, because we haven't still caught up totally to the time, there's still, some this older thinking out there,
It's definitely a slippery slope, but definitely appreciate all of your responses. So we're going to talk about lyrics. And the question is, it starts off with lyrics are getting more explicit. I think they've always been explicit. I'm older. I think I have some age on you, Portia, but in my day it was Little Kim, and now it's Lizzo, and now it's Megan the Stallion. And there's a book that's out. I don't know if anyone has read it. It's by Clover Hope, and it's called The Motherlode. It's a great read. And I'm just going to read a quote from that book. When she speaks about the future of women, Hope writes, "But even as the new generation has made their fan bases feel powerful, Lizzo still received the same crossover criticism as JJ Fad and Jermaine Dupri, who seductively called Cardi B's music stripper rap, proving that even men in hip hop who create the misogyny and denigrate their very own creations." So aside from the misogyny that's still so rampant in music, and I don't think it's just hip hop, music, maybe hip hop is more prevalent. What other factors do you think play into that, where women are getting almost kind of this backsplash, so to speak, for maybe owning their sexuality or being explicit, however way I don't want to put any words in anyone's mouth. But Mickey, you're hip hop and you do everything. Yeah. Would you like to take that question?
Sure. Well, obviously I'm a songwriter first. So when it comes to anything lyrics related, I have really strong opinions. I think women in hip hop, I know we're not just talking about hip hop, but we are, here in America at least, have been primed to believing that they need to have overtly sexual lyrics to be noticed or to garner a strong fan base, or to be honest, get a record deal. And that extends, how do I say it? That extends far beyond the lyrics being said and into some scary scenarios in real life. We've always been taught that sex sells, and that's not a gender-based thing. Men and women are taught that sex sells. And I think that's one of the first business strategies that I actually learned as a young female in the business. You know, the over-sexualized route never felt authentic to me as an artist. And I do find it sad when women that naturally may not want to do that type of music feel kind of forced into it. But on the other hand, it's also super empowering for, you know, female artists that comes naturally to. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword, like the Cardi B's of the world, you know, whether it's called stripper rap or not, as far as I know, that's authentic to who she really is, right? And men can say whatever they want about it. The songs also aren't necessarily for men. They're for the women, you know, in her audience that can relate to that. So there's room to really appreciate these sexualized lyrics, you know, and performances as the authentic art that they are to those artists. You know, it's like a part of our natural power as women to be seductive. And I think we're really far away from like changing how music culture sees women and how we want to see women, and just also how the world sees women at large as like this seductive thing. But long story short, as long as we're being authentic in our messaging as artists, because again, like I'm an artist first, a songwriter first, I think that's all that matters. Like fans will gravitate and men will, you know, say what they want about it, but they're not the ones on stage. I don't know if that really answered the question, but
no, it definitely did. No, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I did want to add, if you want to the almost the second part of the question, and anyone, Portia or Janette or Mickey, if you want to take it again, do you think that's due to a generational divide? Do you think maybe because technology as well, it's everything, right? Everywhere, music is everywhere. It's this instant gratification. Do you think that, if at all, plays a role in the whole thing about lyrics and misogynistic and sexual empowerment, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll just really quickly add on to what I said in regards to technology. All technology has done is made that instant gratification 1,000 times quicker. So it actually puts more pressure on women to either post things that are more sexual, because again, we're kind of like trained that sex sells, which is a super myth that I think we'll probably get into a little bit later. But yeah, so technology has only made more pressure, right? Because we're like taught now, more content, we got to get eyes on us. And yeah, there's that sex sells kind of thing. But anyways, that's my piece. I'm curious what Portia and Janette have to say.
Yes,
Well,
please, ladies. Yes.
Okay, so I have this before, like while I was in a band, I was also in grad school, and I ended up getting a PhD in anthropology, and anthropology is all about culture, right? And culture is basically like the things that happen in our daily life that like we don't determine ourselves, but are predetermined, like breakfast. Like you get up in America, what do you have for breakfast? You have cereal or waffles or eggs. When you get up in Japan, what do you have for breakfast? You have fish and rice. You have something completely different, right? So that, like, I didn't make that up. You guys didn't make that up. Nobody made that up. That's our culture, right? So one of the problems that we have is that it's really easy in our world to lose sight of the bigger picture of culture when you're just thinking about the individual. And I'm an individual, and this is my path I'm forging through life. I'm an artist. I'm writing my lyrics, whatever. But the problem is, as soon as you put it out into the world, the bigger picture of culture also comes into play. So I think the issue that we have is that historically in our culture, the sexualization of women diminishes the women's value, right? So if you are Megan Thee Stallion and you're wearing something incredible that shows off your boobs, now I don't have to take you as seriously, right? Mm-hmm. And all I can say to that is I have never seen a picture in the last 2 years of Justin Bieber with his shirt on. That dude is naked all the time. But apparently I still need to take him completely seriously as an artist. Do you know what I mean? Nowhere in our culture is it that because a man is showing off his incredible abs and tats and hotness, that I need to think less of him, mm-hmm. Right? So that's just where we're at. Like, there's nothing we can do about that except to acknowledge it and to know that it's there, right? And to just own it and say, you know, I'm a woman, I'm in the world, I'm an individual. And if I want to wear like almost nothing to the Grammys, I am fabulous. And you still have to respect me. Right. But that's that piece that women have to do. That's not fair. Right. Is that we have to ask for that respect. We have to demand that respect. Whereas men, they don't lose the respect because of what they are wearing.
Oof. Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you went this route, Portia, because I wanted to share also like a quick story. I read this book literally called Sex, Time, and Power. And essentially what it talks about is how, you know, women, let's say like men basically do a lot of things, you know, like let's say from like when we were in the hunting and gathering stages, like whoever was the biggest provider, the best hunter were the ones that could mate, right? That could mate. Because like there was a time that women would associate sex with death because the brain of humans were growing faster than the pelvis of the woman, you know? So women started associating, you know, sex with death. So they would only have sex with the men that would be good providers. And now that translates today with the man being the most successful, the best car, the best outfits, you know, like whatever. The most successful man will guarantee you a better mate, right? So, you know, it's just like this whole theory. It's super interesting. But that's why, like, I feel like what Mickey was saying, that I feel like if the lyrics are an expression of that artist, like an authentic way of like how she would like to express herself, then she should do it, you know, not when it starts, you know, feeling like something that's commercialized or they're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that's just like, you know, obviously using the system and just exploiting it. But you know, I feel like it's tough for, you know, certain men to accept, you know, that we are sexual as well, you know, especially, you know, particularly for us in Eastern cultures, you know, because like there are certain cultures that are more open than others. And I feel then also another layer too, that I feel like that adds is like, you know, social media. I didn't grow up with like Instagram or like Snapchat or any of these apps. Like I had no idea how I was looking when I was 12 years old, you know, like I wasn't taking selfies, or you weren't really self-aware, you know, and I feel like it's a lot of pressure now for girls, particularly, you know, it's like this acceptance and the likes and, you know, and all this stuff when you know, we didn't used to have that pressure, at least particularly me, you know, so I see that, you know, obviously technology has accelerated a little bit that process of like the sexualization, you know, and like, because like your image is so important, you know, and other people's acceptance. But yeah, you know, I feel like it has to be authentic, and, you know, like sex is power and women hold the key because we can say no, you know.
Right. The name of the book, someone asked, I see in a number of chat, is Sex, Time, and Power. Janette,
Yep.
do you?
Yes.
That's the name of the book, everyone. So definitely. Let's talk about, you mentioned something, you said pressure, Janette, as young girls. So we're all women on the call. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. That's a pressure. And for those of you who are new to the term, I'm sure you've heard it before, but just in case, it's defined, and I'm going to give you the Merriam-Webster version. The feeling that your achievements are not real or that you do not deserve praise or success. In other words, you feel that you don't belong. You feel like you walk into a studio, a boardroom, and you're questioning, should I be here? Why am I here? When are they going to find out I really don't deserve to be here? And that is a pressure. So I would love to ask all of you, have you experienced it? Which I already know what the answer is, but how do you overcome it? How do you deal with that? And follow up to, and another question to that, we're just gonna knock it right out for sake of time, mental health, because that can affect your mental health. So I know it's a lot. Let's ask one, if you've had it before, how you deal with it, how you've overcome it, and your mental health. How do you keep that at a balance in your day-to-day? Anyone? Janette, you want to start this time?
Sure. Yeah, I feel, yes, definitely. You know, I suffer from it, you know, and then like in different stages, you know, I always have these things lingering of like, oh, I have this job, why do I have it? You know, like all this stuff. But, you know, I feel at the same time, like something that has really helped me is like talking to other peers that have similar positions, because once you start talking to them, you realize that you probably are going through the same issues. It's helpful too, because you can share ideas of what has worked, with them and what's working with you. So I feel like it's like a good relief. I feel like that's like one of the better things. And obviously just kind of also not being so hard on yourself, just really think of the facts of like the accomplishments that you have and the preparation that you've had. And I feel like that goes a long way. And also understanding that in business, like we're in business. And again, apologies for the sound. I just can't control it. Understand too that in business, you're always going to be testing things, like there are certain theories. Oh, okay, this is supposed to work this way, but you're constantly going to be trying things, so, and you're going to fail. And the times that you're failing, those are lessons, because now, that's not how it's done, that you have to try it this other way, so understand that in business, there's always going to be failures. Always. The biggest companies always have failures, so it's part of the process, and of being an entrepreneur. The moment that you're coasting and you're not challenging yourself and that things are too easy, then that's when I think like you're in trouble, because like then you're just being stagnant, but yeah, biggest recommendations there, talking it over with other people. Also like your managers, if you have any more, if you have questions, or if you're a manager and you're seeing that somebody is suffering, like you see that they're kind of stuck, or maybe they have a lot of anxiety with certain tasks, or talk to them and try to ease them, like making sure that they have all the resources that they need, to be able to complete those tasks that perhaps are, like making them feel, having more anxiety,
Great. And from the activity in the chat, you're getting a lot of woohoos and a lot of agreement. So thank you for those words. Mickey or Portia, how do you deal?
I'll add something to that. I think that the fact that imposter syndrome even has a name just goes to show how many people suffer from it. And it's not like a suffering. Well, it hasn't been for me. I've obviously experienced that. The most memorable moments that I've experienced it is when I'm making a big change in my life, or I'm dreaming bigger for myself. And what I will say is the last time that I felt it really intensely was 2018. I'd had a really long songwriting career and like killed that. And I'd experienced it along the way there too. Like if I'm going in the studio with like a Diplo or an Alex the Kid, or like talking to Timbaland on the phone, I'm like, shit, did I write for Janet? Like you get in these moments of like questioning your own accomplishments. And am I good enough to be in the room with this person? And it's wild, but everyone experiences that. But the last time I really felt it was 2018, when I decided to start mentoring other songwriters and artists, which I had never done in a professional way before. And I remember I posted it, whether it was Facebook or Instagram, and I was like, hey, I'm going to start a mentorship program. Felt like a total fraud, complete fraud. I'm like, what experience do I have other than these 10 years? Like, and doing all and platinum plaques, right? It's a mind F, right? I don't know if we can swear on here. But what happened was I did 3 calls, just 3 in a span of like a week. And I was like, oh my God, all of the basic information that I thought was basic is completely revolutionary to other people. They didn't know about DistroKid. I mean, now we all know about DistroKid. This is back in the day. Didn't know how to get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. They didn't know about BMI and ASCAP. I'm like, that's how you collect your publishing royalties. Don't get me started on Songtrust helping with that. All these things that were super basic. So what I would say a technique to like get over the imposter syndrome is to go through it. Like you actually have to go through it. And then you get past it because you build all of these confidence blocks, during that process. And whether it takes a week, like it did for me, or 3 years, it doesn't matter. You're building the confidence going through it. So yeah, that's my piece on imposter syndrome. Yeah, facing the fear. Exactly. I was looking at the chat there.
Definitely. Portia.
I think everyone experiences imposter syndrome. I think men and women do it. I think it's just really natural. And I think I concur with what everyone's saying. You just have to remember that you do have experience, and that your experience is different from other people's experience. So surely you're going to know a couple things that help out other people, and they're going to know a couple things that help out you. I mean, when you walk into a room and talk to a new person and they know something that you didn't know, you don't immediately go, well, that's it, I'm going home. Forget it. You knew something that I didn't know, I'm out. Like, that's just not how it works. So, you know, we share knowledge, and then we realize that we know more, like you said, Mickey, like we know more, or like the pieces of knowledge that we didn't think much of, like actually that can be very helpful to somebody else. So
Yeah.
I think we all just
Definitely.
have to work through it. And then eventually you get old like me, and you're just not nervous about it anymore, because you're like, what, huh? And also it's like, I know plenty, I've been around plenty, but I'm always excited to learn more stuff. And that's the fun thing about the music industry. There's always new stuff coming right immediately, like tech changes and, you know, policy changes and music changes. And so it's like, it just gets fun eventually, because you're like, well, I do have all this old knowledge, but you can't rest on that either. You know, you got to keep learning, or else you're not going to be current.
And you talk about you're learning more to get you through it. You know, let's talk about how we learn from each other and how we show up for each other, specifically women. Let's just talk a little bit about that. What do you think in the industry? How important is that that we do show up, and that we're, you know, comrades and not competition? Janette, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think for, in a sense, like it's really good to like maybe join like any local like woman groups that might know about, whether they're regional. You know, women music has a lot that are regional. Now there's a lot of other ones that are specialized, like, you know, in production, or perhaps, you know, like more specialized roles, you know, so kind of like doing your research. I've been part of Women in Music, and I love that they have these like, you know, like the mailing group. You know, a lot of women are always asking questions and looking for, you know, suggestions on different things. And I've asked a few questions from time to time and always get like great responses. I feel too, like for more, you know, like once you start maybe reaching like a more senior role, you know, like kind of like perhaps identifying, you know, women in your organization that you can help out, you know, and helping in their development, you know, from, you know, whether it's like mentorships or, you know, recruitment pledges, you know, for, you know, specific, you know, like roles in the company. One thing too that I would highly recommend, you know, also we did it once at Symphonic. We reached out to this company called bold.org, and they help you build a scholarship for however, you know, whatever it is that you want to build it for. So we did ones that were for like more focused on diversity and inclusion. So, you know, it was like 3 grants, you know, for like, I think we did them for $3,000 each. And it's a great way, you know, if you want to do like further commitment with women, you know, perhaps consider doing some scholarships, you know, for women, or whatever your budget may be, you know. But I feel like those could be, you know, some ideas that come to mind.
Great. And Portia, someone I consider you an ally. Please speak on it. You've definitely shown up for me, and I've appreciated that multiple times. So if you can just share as well how we need to, the importance of showing up for one another as women.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's absolutely critical. You know, I mean, I feel like when I was talking about culture, it's like you have to know that, you know, we're still fighting against a lot of stereotypes and a lot of sort of just things that exist in the culture, which are going to cause roadblocks for people. And so women absolutely have to advocate for each other. They absolutely have to bring each other along. You know, on my board, when I got to music biz, there were 13 white guys and 2 white women. And now we have, first of all, we have a board, an advisory board, and a junior board. So we have like 40 people instead of 15. And it's 70% women and 40% people of color. And that's not the end, that's the beginning, that's the middle, you know, we're moving. You know, we have to have representation, but it's like when you get a position of power and you have the ability to make some change, you got to actually use it, exercise it, and bring people along, because otherwise, why do you have your position of power? What is the point?
Exactly. And just for sake of time, I feel like we could talk for hours. We always say this, but just don't want to leave. Let's start with just some closing remarks, some final advice, maybe what you're working on next, so people know where to find you, contact information, and the like. Especially, I'm sure many people on the call want to know, any advice starting in the business, staying in the business. That's important as well. Mickey, why don't we start with you since you kind of going back around?
Oh yeah, sure. I agree with what Portia and Janette just said. I would just add that it's really what Portia said about when you are in a position of power, making sure that you're advocating for other women and bringing more women on board and all of that. And from kind of the music, like creative side, I would say, if you're like an artist or a songwriter, just coming into it with a mindset of, I'm not competing with other women. Like I really want to build with them. We're really primed to like compete with other women. And a lot of that is from media and award shows and all this, but I know it's easier said than done. Like, let's not compete. But I think my last piece of advice is, and I said this before, but really just being authentic. I know that's hard. That's kind of like a life skill of being authentic, whether it's in the corporate world, in your, romantic life, whatever part of life. But it really does pay off to do the work on yourself. And I think Portia mentioned that earlier in the call. At the end of the day, to become the best version of ourselves, it's all about doing that personal development, right? And so that's my last piece. It's just work to get to a place where you can be authentic, because that's going to lead to a much easier life than feeling like you have to put on some sort of front, that doesn't actually jive with who you are. So that's me. That's my advice.
Great. Janette?
Yeah, I totally agree. With what Mickey is saying, just it's okay, to be yourself and get uncomfortable sometimes, like I was saying, like at times, just kind of showing up, like I remember doing kind of like panels for the first time, or like hosting a chat with 400 people. And I was like, before going to stage, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, why am I even doing this? But it's like the need to do it was like bigger, to like, just like, what we were going to talk about, I feel like was more important than how embarrassed I must have felt or anything like that. But yeah, I feel like that's really important, staying true to yourself. And also, if you're from a specific, diverse group, also showing up, because it's important, to have representation. I certainly feel it as a Latina woman, kind of, coming here in your company. My husband too is from a Dominican Republic, so I feel like we're kind of like, rare and few, like going to a lot of these events. So it's really important, to like be there and have representation, and even help, kind of sometimes help also some of your own as well, from time to time. And then for, I would say like, people that are starting out, I always recommend too, whenever we hire, let's say new interns, or let's say like really junior positions, like specializing in something, like there's so many resources out there in terms of things that you can learn, that it's always good to come to the table with like a little bit of extra knowledge, so if you're really good at video, then hey, like know how to edit videos, how to optimize, maybe learn a couple of apps out there, like tools that you can use to edit them, kind of like become a little specialized, at least like in your whatever you're might be passionate about specifically. So at least you come to the table with something else. Networking is really important, so finding all these like different groups that are out there, and being humble is really important too, because I guess you have to be confident, but at the same way understand, that you have to be humble. And I remember when somebody told me that it's like, it's better to, like it was more in terms of like, let's say like more like, let's say if you're looking for sponsorships or, anything that has to do with funding, but I feel like it can apply to different things. But it's like, don't come asking for something, just ask for advice, because then you'll get something else in return. Instead of asking for a job, like ask for some advice and maybe you'll find a job,
Great. And Portia, no pressure, but with some time to spare, what your advice, closing thoughts?
I think probably I have like 3 pieces of advice. One is grow your network, right? In terms of diversity, in terms of, the area of the music industry that you're in. If you are in publishing, reach out and find some people in other, in A&R and, publicity and marketing, find some, grow your network in diversity and in many ways, because that's only going to help you in the long run. Get some mentorship, get a community around you, subscribe to those newsletters, Music Business Worldwide. What are they all called? Your Daily Coffee, or what's it? Oh, he's gonna be so mad that I don't remember what that's called.
I think it's your morning coffee about
Good
Gilbert.
morning coffee. Your morning coffee. That's it.
Jay Gilbert.
Jay Gilbert's. There's like 7 of them, and that's free. Subscribe to those, and you'll get tons of information. And those almost always have job listings in them. A lot of times they'll have supportive things like mentorship, or groups that are offering things for free, internships, sponsorships. Women in Music offers internships, Symphonic. And mentorship programs, so sort of get into the community, create a community amongst yourselves. And then also, this is a new one, but I think it's a really good piece of advice. I'm interviewing, so our big keynote at Music Biz next month is John Platt, who's like literally the highest ranking Black executive in the music industry. He almost never, ever gives interviews. But one of the things that John Platt has had forever is an executive coach, which is just a really interesting thing to think about. Just think about the fact that it's like, when we were talking about imposter syndrome, it's like, if you feel like you don't know how to do this job, well, get some help, get somebody to give you some advice and who's been around. And that's okay. I think that's another issue we have sometimes as women, is we think we can do it all ourselves. Like, no, it's cool. I can be a mom and a wife and can take care of my house and run a company and then you lose your mind. So, like, get some help. And there's a lot of folks out there who are doing executive coaching that are really affordable, because they're, young and starting out, or they're, in the middle of their careers. There's a ton of companies that I can think of off the top of my head that are doing it. So that's sort of like a new addition to my roster of advice, but I think it's a really good one.
I think all of them are, and everything you all said today, definitely a lot of food for thought. Thank you, everyone. Janette, Mickey, Portia, just thank you for joining us. Please, everyone who logged on, saw your notes in the chat, please look out for us. There's going to be an email where you will have the recorded session being made available to you. There will also be a survey. Please complete that survey so we can get some feedback, and continue to follow us at Songtrust. If you're not, or if you still are, we're going to have some more great events coming up in the near future. So again, thank you, ladies. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This was a pleasure. It was actually my honor to meet all of you, and just to have the opportunity to speak with you. Just a lot of information and education. These ladies are not staring you wrong, people. Please take their advice. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn. Reach out to us, make those connections, start that networking. Everyone have a great, fabulous weekend. And thank you again from Songtrust.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.